From behind the driver's seat in a car, Democratic candidate Cary Kennedy announced via Facebook Live that she is joining the race for governor in the 2018 election. Meanwhile, according to the Colorado Statesman, Republican gubernatorial candidate Victor Mitchell plans to release campaign numbers showing up to $3 million raised in the last quarter, made up almost entirely by a loan from himself. Patty, we've been talking about the governor's race for the last couple of weeks, but we had some new developments. We have, at the very least, an inventive way to announce you're running for governor, driving behind the wheel of a car, which didn't seem to give a smooth introduction for Cary Kennedy. What were your thoughts?
Well, that Mike Johnston must be kicking himself that he didn't do it on a skateboard when instead he just concentrated on going out and starting to raise money too. So he had those very impressive first quarter numbers. Or, you know, we could have had Ed Perlmutter in a kayak or on a bicycle. Facebook Live is a great tool, and it's good you can actually communicate with people. They can watch you, they can send in plenty of comments, but with everybody's concerns about safe driving, even with all the assurances we've had that they cleared the way, and I did catch her looking both ways. There was a little, it sounded like someone was opening a door, or maybe they hadn't put their seatbelt on, if you were listening. There was a little beep, beep, beep. It wasn't the smartest way to do it, but it certainly got people talking. And it wasn't so embarrassing that it is a huge misstep. The question right now is, how will she take off? How strong is her group that let her do this in the fundraising?
That's a good point. David, let's get to that point. I don't think there's going to be any voters in the primary election next June that are going to say, oh, wait a second, she had that video where she made her announcement. But the funders that her and Perlmutter and Johnston are all calling right now, in addition to Noel Ginsburg and probably a couple more folks we're forgetting, they will see that. That will be on top of mind. Is that going to be a problem?
Yes. The title of this thing, I think, was Smart Woman, Foolish Choices. She did. It's terrible in every possible sense. It's extremely unsafe driving, and then the excuse is, well, it was actually fake driving because we cleared the road and she, wasn't sort of really just driving her kids home from school and talking. It was kind of a stage play. Some people will hear about that, and that just makes it all the more inauthentic. And what if you're somebody who is not following politics all the time, but you saw this as a share, and maybe you kind of heard the name Cary Kennedy, but this is sort of the first time you're maybe thinking about her. Well, what you think is, why is this woman driving while she's reading from a script, obviously looking at the script from time to time, and you may not find out, well, actually this whole thing was a fake, so she really wasn't as dangerous as she apparently made it look. If I were a casual voter, that would be a turnoff. And if you're a donor, of course, it's a strong, important early sign of competence. She has a reputation from her work in the state treasurer's office and then now the Denver city government as a very competent person, but she seriously undermined that. So if I were thinking about writing a $500 check to her in the primary election as a Democratic donor, those kind of people might decide to hold back and wait a while to see if the campaign gets on its feet in a more solid way.
Penn, we can look at both the Kennedy announcement, but we also have Victor Mitchell making this announcement. Now, a candidate funding his or her own campaign is not new, nor is someone with deep pockets in this state new. Jared Polis has been able to make a lot of hay doing the very same thing. Does Victor Mitchell pose any problems for a George Brockler or possibly a Walker Stapleton if he formally announces because of his deep pockets?
Yes and no. At this point, what's interesting is we've got 18 candidates who have declared they're running, but only 2 have filed the necessary paperwork with the Secretary of State. So it's going to be a very crowded field. Victor Mitchell loaning himself $3 million obviously helps him. But in a race like the governor's race, what you've got to do is have enough money to execute your campaign plan. But if you never raise your visibility, if you don't raise your awareness among voters, you can have $10 million. It's not going to matter. You're not going to win. And that's the important thing. So he's made his splash now. It'll be interesting to see if it's the only splash he makes because he's loaned himself this money. The thing about the Kennedy announcement that I find interesting is Cary announced, I think, 1 or 2 days after Ed Perlmutter announced, but all you're talking about is Cary Kennedy's Facebook post and announcement. So good, bad, or indifferent, it had the effect of knocking Perlmutter out of the conversation for the short term.
Eric, let's stick with that point. Publicity is publicity, whether it be critical or positive. Is that a positive thing for Cary Kennedy at this point, seeing how the announcement was a little bumpy?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good point because I think a lot of people see Perlmutter as the favorite in this race, and it definitely helps raise her profile when her work at the city, I think, was a little more behind the scenes, maybe not as, it's been a while since she's been in this more prominent statewide role. And I certainly think it could have been a better start. It could have been a better start, but I think that's a really good point, and I don't think that voters are going to remember this